Yo, what is going on, guys? Godrekton here today, bringing you my latest video. And in this video, I'm going to be going over my thoughts and opinions on Split 3, aka patch 14.19, where I'll be reviewing everything that you need to know about Renekton's state in the upcoming meta and state of the game. So this question has been bombarded to me recently in the comment section, so I know a lot of you guys have been looking forward to what I have to say about these upcoming changes. Some people call it the Apocalypse change. I've seen it all over Reddit. People saying they're not going to play Renekton anymore. That all these item changes are absolutely horrible and that takes them away from the game. But to be quite honest with you guys, I'm actually thinking of things a little bit differently. And I will be explaining to you why I actually think this patch is not as bad as it seems. Now, initially, when the changes did first come out on the PBE, I was as mad as you guys. Eclipse was getting gutted. I think a lot of other changes were happening, which were just really bad for Renekton, but a lot of things have been pulled back since, Eclipse specifically. So Eclipse will not be getting the passive removed, it'll actually be keeping the passive, as well as just only going up 100 gold and 10 AD less, which, if you look at that, that is still perfectly fine for Renekton. And this is just one of the many changes that actually becomes a benefit to the current crop of item changes for like most of the characters in the game. So when you compare what Renekton has compared to other champions, you'll start seeing a pattern where Renekton actually looks better than his contemporaries. So that said though, guys, there is a lot of things here to kind of go over, but I will try my best to keep it concise as possible. So whether that's 30 minutes or however long, I don't know, but I'll try my best to keep it short and sweet for you guys, and we'll cover everything that I need to talk about. Now, obviously, as I'm recording this, it will be out on the day that this patch is released. So firstly, I want to go into my overall initial thoughts of 14.19, aka Split 3. So firstly, my first thought when I did see these changes was durability patch 2.0 or 3.0. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically what Riot was trying to achieve a couple years ago now, or maybe a year ago, where they completely gutted a lot of the damage in the game by lowering all the stats from all the items and making sure that people aren't getting one-shot and people have more survivability within their kits. Now, over this period of time where they have done that, there has been little patches that have reduced snowballing, which has affected Renekton quite drastically. Things like tower plane changes, respawn timers, item cost nerfs, AD nerfs, a lot of things essentially. And all these things have a giant impact on Renekton because Renekton's all about maintaining a lead and snowballing over your opponent. And when you start taking away these things from him, or if you start adding these little subtle changes that do go a longer way for Renekton, patch by patch, that's where he's going to feel a lot weaker. Now this time, a few things have changed, but before this even goes through this patch, we have had some buffs as well to Renekton's snowballing, so he has felt a bit better. And I think in terms of that, it won't actually be affecting him. But aside from that, there are little things that I do want to go over regarding this that will have an impact on Renekton. The next thing I want to touch on too is that overall, there is lower damage across the entire board of characters in League. So every champion in the game will be getting hit to an extent. Now, a lot of champions will probably get nerfed by 10 to, let's say, 30%, I would say, overall. Which is pretty drastic for some, but for some it's also pretty minor. I would say Renekton probably falls towards a 10% mark, where there are going to be some item nerfs that are going to affect him compared to some stages in the game. Like waiting for an extra 100 gold can obviously be, a big tough task. That means waiting for an extra minion wave to come around, which can, end up getting you killed. You could end up regretting the way you shoved the wave in or missing CS. So it is all going to make a big difference there. But in terms of damage as well across the board as well, ADCs are getting massively nerfed in terms of some of that itemization, which ends up giving them less survivability from having less moon speed or less damage on their power spikes. Same thing with mages. Mages are getting a bit of a damage reduction too from their AP items. And all in all, it's not just a Renekton change that's happening, but there's a lot of changes that are happening to classes that were very annoying for Renekton to deal with. And most specifically, a lot of the moon speed items, like I said, are getting nerfed. They're getting tapered down from, I think, from 10% to some to 4%. Maybe it was 7 to 4. But either way, that is still a substantial amount of moon speed being lost. So I'll actually give you more ways to actually reach AD carries in the long run. So my next point is that, is there lower snowballing potential? Well, as I go through these changes, there are some things that will lower the snowball potential, but in my opinion, from my initial thoughts, I don't think that's exactly the case as it seems, because even if you consider every champion being nerfed, Renekton is still an outlier where if you do get ahead on this champion, you're going to be a lot stronger gaining ahead too, because the champions that you're beating are taking longer to even scale now, because you put them behind, they have to reach more gold to get their items that will outscale you, and if you can have more time just to do that, that in the long run is a lot better for you. So think of it in a way where if you are getting ahead, it is a bigger bonus. However, if you are behind, it can feel a lot worse. So I guess we just go off of that, really, that it's not just the end of the world. And I think both sides of, you know, the spectrum that you're on, whether you're playing as a carry or like some kind of champion that wants to, you know, scale or take time, or maybe you fall behind. You know, there is pros and cons to both of those things, obviously. The next thing as well, just as like initial thought, will Renekton's playability be affected? So as I'm like talking right now about these changes, I kind of disagree, but I can see for some people that why they might think that. But as we go into the changes, I do want to reassure you guys that I actually think that these patch notes aren't as bad as it seems. Now with that being said though, guys, let's get into the patch notes of 14.19. So as I'm just going through here, I'm not going to read all these changes because, to be quite honest with you, I don't really care. And if you want to read some of these changes about champions, feel free. Like, I could sit here and make a 2-hour video on Cassante, but to be quite honest with you, I do have a life, and I'm, you know, a bit tired. It is a little bit late, as you can tell here, so I'm going to ignore these changes. But I guess to conclude it, I think he's even more confusing as before. Anyways, let's go past all these champion changes. So there are some little things here that do stick out already as we're going through. Like, some of these like smaller components are getting changed. Like, we have Dagger here, which is going 300 to 250. Pretty good for attack speed based champions, you could say. We have these large rod going down from 1250 to 1200. And we also have the AP going from 70 to 65 as well. So there are these little minor changes as well. Next we come to Hexdrinker being nerfed by 30 to 25. With a lot of other AP like items getting nerfed too or reduced, it's not the worst thing, so that's completely fine in my book. Warhammer, little slight change there, doesn't really change anything. Like, a lot of these components, I'm just going to kind of zoom through, but I will just show you like some little changes that we would probably build as Renekton players. So moon speed from Zeal is lowered a little bit. It also went up in cost. Again, so for champions like ADCs, it is going to take them a little bit longer to scale. Greeding for one more wave is always a very risky thing to do. So they have to play it even more perfect to get these items. So that is something that you also have to consider, that if you are putting them behind, that it's going to take them longer to scale. So this rewards your snowballing even more in a way, as we're looking at this. Now, again, it's very minor, but still, it's like just those little things that add up. It gives you that little bit of extra that can put you, that can reward your snowballing and the way you're playing in the games to help you in the long run. As we go down, Codex reduced a little bit. Aether Wisp also reduced a little bit, and cost increased a bit. So it's all these little changes here. Moonplate, this actually got a decent change. I mean, 50 extra health is pretty good for 1 moon speed. Not really bad. Warden's Mail, let's see how this got changed. So Rock Sword now affects champion damage. So it doesn't affect minions anymore, which is, you know, I guess a decent change if you're playing in a minion wave. And then at the end of the day, it's like pretty good. It's only an added benefit if you're, you know, a Renekton playing against someone playing this item. Bramble Vest is getting increased, so obviously tank champions will be doing more damage as well. We have to keep that into mind. Bami Cinder kind of got gutted. Like, buying a Bami Cinder, which goes from 200 to 150, is kind of whatever, so that's pretty underwhelming if you ask me. Negatron Cloak, I don't think these changes really affect Renekton in the slightest. I mean, it's still a decent item. I mean, it's whatever, really. You're just going to buy it, sit on it, and that's basically it. So it's still decent. Spectre's Howl going up makes it pretty nice for the items that you want to buy it for. So Spirit Visage, potentially, but I don't see it as a big item, to be honest. But still, if you guys like Spirit Visage, that's a little buff to you. Fighter items. Now, this is where a lot of things get interesting here, and this is where a lot of people start to either misunderstand what's going on for Renekton, or like they will read the changes and not be as feeling as doomed as you might think. So firstly, Wit's End. Wit's End is actually getting a bit of a gutting if we look at it this way, because going from 40 to 80 to only 45 damage now is pretty big for champions like Irelia and stuff like that. Either way though, Renekton doesn't care about this item, but if you are playing against these champions that are going to build it, it's going to have less effectiveness to you in the dueling potential, so it is something to consider. Like, Wit's End looks like it's, you know, massively nerfed in a way for some of these champions. Now, Eclipse, one of my favorite items, and one of your favorite items too for a Renekton player. So, Eclipse, in my opinion, is still really great. I mean, 100 extra gold is still great for the stats you're getting. You're getting the same passive, you're getting a shield, you're still getting like 60 AD, like this, the haste. There's so many good things that Eclipse is still giving you. And if you think of it in this way, percentage-based items are going to actually be a lot stronger for Renekton. comparing to like before in a way that they give more better power spikes, as 6%, you know, bonus damage or max health damage goes a long way. So does the current health damage of Blair Ruin King. If Eclipse did get gutted like it was going to with the passive removal originally, Blair Ruin King would be the obvious choice to go. So honestly, pretty decent change. Doesn't change anything for Renekton. Yeah, you might greed out on one more wave, but if you're snowballing, shouldn't really feel much. Can get it from a plating too. And if you're ahead of your opponent too, who's trying to rush this, like, it's going to feel even better for you. So I don't think it really takes too much from this like hit, and it's still pretty fine for Renekton overall. Chempunk Chainsword. So this is getting a pretty crazy change. So 2,800 to 3,100. And it's building from... What is it building from? Executioner's Giant Belt Caulfield. Yeah, I don't know about this one. I mean, to me, it just looks a bit meh. Like, you have to spend more gold on this item to get these stats. So, yeah, I think this item could still be good if you're, like, playing a more utility-based build and you're settling on a third item where you want to go Chempunk Sword in, like, a pro play game or maybe 4th, 5th. I don't recommend it, but you can do it, right? So it's not the worst thing you could do. So it is just something that you can potentially have to buy in your late game item arsenal. Hexblade, don't really care about Hexblade. I think this is whatever for Renekton, so I'm going to avoid it because I think it was always bad. Now, Hullbreaker. Hullbreaker was a rare item on Renekton where you could play if you want to split push. And it seems like now it's being changed to Tunneler, Wing Plate, and Pickaxe, which is pretty decent. Don't think it's a bad change. I think it's good for bruisers. AD is getting a big hit though, losing 15 AD there. Health is going up a big amount though, which is pretty decent for Renekton. How does the on-hit work now? So this gets a little bit of a tweak here. So they're moving the AD percentage and like kind of shifting it into the max health. And Renekton already kind of feels good with like a lot of max health builds. There's a lot of health builds you can do. So this is actually not as bad as a purchase, like if you are the rare person that does play it. So all in all, I think it's pretty decent. But it's more of a Scion change by the looks of it. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good overall for Renekton. Even the melee stats kind of go up here. So you could see it being built maybe as a third item still if you just want to do it. Or maybe, I wouldn't say second, but third item, you could definitely make this work as well. Black Cleaver. So Black Cleaver's gained a bit of an interesting change too. So they're changing Phage, Caulfield, and Ruby Crystal to Phage, Kindle Gem, Pickaxe. Yay. I always thought having a Kindle Gem in this build was like really bad in the past. And now they've also added a Pickaxe. You know, it's kind of good for Renekton for snowballing in a way. Because, well, is it though? I don't really know, to be honest with you. Kind of weird though. Pickaxe. I think you just go Eclipse. I mean, you can't go wrong around a pickaxe in your, you know, inventory, but to me, it's just a little bit weird. And I guess you finish it off a bit faster too, compared to before with the items you go. So, I don't know. It's kind of whatever change. I think the AD, 15 AD being lost from it is a pretty big hit to me as well, but I think you still build it just based on utility alone. Next, we have more Mortius here. So more going to 10 AD reduction here, 70 to 60, and the lifeline passive is being nuked to 225 to 150%. So really big deal. You might not want to build this as much as you were before if you were building it. So I don't know, I might stay away from this item myself because I think this is too big of a hit if you ask me. Especially when they were saying they're going to reduce 10%. This is more than 10%, you know? So yeah, not really a big fan of this change, but is what it is. Spirit Shojin. So Shojin works differently now, I believe, as well. So the way they've done this is that they've actually removed the haste completely from the base item, and they have changed it to having a tunneler and a ruby crystal. So again, if for Renekton, it's actually a lot worse because you're into the whole snowballing stats of things, right? And because now Riot's like made it into tunneler and ruby crystal, you're spending on these defensive stats which aren't giving you more damage or carryability in your timing points of the game. So to me, it's a bit lackluster here, and I don't really like it. And it's because of like there's no haste in it too, so you're kind of waiting to complete the item before you get it unlocked. Now the basic ability has gone from 15 to 25. I don't know if this is better. I've seen some people say it's better, but to me it looks worse. It's definitely more bruisery, but I don't think it's like as good of a choice as it was before, if you ask me. Losing 10 AD, 0 base haste, and I guess the health going up could be good. Maybe it's somewhat decent. I don't know yet. You guys in the comments have to let me know like how you feel about this. But to me, I'm a little bit iffy on this change, I'll be honest with you. Sundered Sky. So Sundered Sky is getting a similar treatment. A tunneler, I mean, already had before. core fields, and ruby crystal. So it's just a ruby extra. I mean, that's whatever. 5 AD less, 5 less haste, and lower health. So overall, item is getting nerfed. Like, straight up nerf here. Not even a little, like, slight change to buff the item, really. Just a nerf. Like, maybe you can finish it earlier, not have to wait 850 gold, or, like, you can sit on a ruby, but that's just taking space anyways. So, to me, this item wasn't already one of the best items on Renekton. It was already pretty underwhelming to me. So, like, I'd say a B tier item, probably falling to a C tier item now, because you don't really want weak stats. But yeah, that's my opinion on that one. Blade of Ruin King. So this is only going down 10 AD. That does nothing to the people that use it. People like Renekton, Irelia, probably ADC champions too. This does nothing. So this is actually still pretty good. Because over the years, Blade of Ruin King has been 40 AD as well. 50 was kind of a bonus to like what it was given. But 40 is not the end of the world. You can rush it first time if you want to. Build it second, third, wherever you want to build it really. As long as you get it to snowball in the games or playing the right matchup, it's going to feel good for you, and that'll feel the same. Death Dance being changed to having 100 extra cost. I think this is a bit underwhelming. 3,300 gold is a lot, and for Death Stance, I don't think the stats warrant it being that price at all. I mean, it could stay at 3,200, but to just increase it even more, I don't think it's a good change, and I think it's just pretty underwhelming if you ask me. So yeah, I've never really rated Death Stance for quite a number of years now. So I think it's going to still be dead as far as I'm concerned. You know, dead's dance, I guess. Which isn't really dancing at all, I suppose. Yeah, moving on. Sterak's Gage. So this is a pretty big item for Renekton. It's losing 5% base AD, and the shield is going down by 20%. Definitely a bit of a sizable nerf here, but to be quite honest with you, I don't think Renekton gets the biggest hit. He's already gaining a lot of health from these items that he's going to have. He's already going to be a raid boss with them. The tenacity is still pretty good. The cost is the same. You're going to lose a little bit of base AD, but to be quite honest with you, it's still a great item, and you can still build it. Probably at the same point you want to. Maybe third item, you could probably shift it into if you want to build something second. But yeah, we'll have to see how that feels, but I think it won't feel the worst, if you ask me. Moving on, we have Stridebreaker now. Now, I'm going to admit something to you guys. In my build guide video, I completely shit on this item. I thought that this item was truly dog shit, because the games I would build it, I was building it first or I build it second, and to me, it just didn't feel good. It felt really weak, and when I looked at it in perspective, it was 3,300 gold while having less stats than most of the other items you want to be playing anyways on Renekton. But what I recently learned was that the way to really play this item is you build it second, and then you have the insane utility of your mid game to reach people a lot easier in this meta climate where everyone had moon speed and stuff, and Stridebreaker really became one of my favorite items in that time as well. Now, will it remain like one of my favorite items? I don't know, because 10 AD it's losing 5% attack speed, and they're also removing the temper passive, which was basically the Black Cleaver Phage on hit passive where you just run around, hit minions and get moon speed. And this paired with Black Cleaver was also giving moon speed as well, but now that I remove this, you're actually losing a lot of moon speed in a result of that. So to be quite honest with you, this is a pretty big hit overall. I don't know how this item's going to feel, but it's definitely going to be feeling a lot weaker. It could still feel good due to the fact that a lot of champions aren't going to be as fast as they are. But does that mean you need to build this item to reach them? Probably not. So yeah, we're going to see how this feels. But to me, I think Stridebreaker lost a lot of stride in these nerfs. And I really do think that it's going to take some getting used to if it's good or not. But we'll see as well. Ravenous Hydra. Ravenous Hydra, it's kind of whatever. I mean, it's basically nerfed, but I don't think it was even good on Renekton in the first place. I think these days, Ravenous Hydra just doesn't feel good on Renekton because a lot of people build healing reduction. Overall, the only thing it is doing is just pushing faster, but I don't think you should just build an item to push faster and to get 10 million CS at 10 minutes. At the end of the day, if your item sucks, it's not going to really do much, and there's just a lot of better items like Eclipse. You already have a lot of wave clear in your kit. You can then go another item that's going to be more relevant. And in my opinion, I just think it's like B tier, C maybe. So yeah. Sorry to all my Ravenous Hydra lovers out there, but this item is not for me. Titanic Hydra. So Titanic is getting changed too. So it seems like it's getting a giant spell instead of Ruby Crystal now. AD is getting lower. Health is also up by 50, and they have changed to cleave damage as well. Could this be seen playing again from the health side of things and like having some kind of health Renekton build like with Bloodmail, Sterak, Titanic, and maybe Cleaver? Possibly, but you're lacking haste too. And I think haste is a pretty big asset, but maybe you could go haste rune. Maybe there's something you could actually cook there with a build, and maybe I'll test it out, but I don't see Titanic really gaining a lot of stocks here from this change, so I don't know if things will really change, but like I said, I'll try everything that I can, and I'll also see if this build does function to be able to be pretty good. Next, we have Overlords Bloodmail here, so this is going from 40 to 30 and 500 to 550. This doesn't change in its relevancy. I mean, if anything, the more health that you're gaining now from some of these changes, you're going to get that AD back that you've lost. So that 10 AD is going to be converted into health that you're gaining from these items. So if anything, I think the synergy is still there, and you can definitely maybe build this. Definitely not like an S tier item, but maybe there's a build to be had there that we could try, and that's what we're going to see. And finally, Triforce. We don't really care about this item, and that's basically it for mainly Renekton's items. But let's just go over some little other item changes that will kind of redefine the meta and why I think Renekton's actually not that bad. Alright guys, so we are back now to discuss the ADC items and why I think this is also a beneficial change towards Renekton and the overall meta state of the game. So the first time that I want to talk about is Phantom Dancer. So Phantom Dancer is already reduced to 2,650. So 50 gold increase, you know, pretty whatever in the grand scheme of things. But the move speed change is the biggest thing here. So 12% to 8% is a big deal. You are losing a sizable amount of moon speed in combination with all the other moon speed items that are getting nerfed. So your typical ADC player will be taking a big hit from that alone. And then when you look at all these other changes corresponding from Phantom Dancer, you have all of these moon speed based items that ADCs would typically buy, all going to 2,650, which is, again, I mean, if you're going to buy multiple of these items, that's like an extra 100 to 150 gold that is, you know, being increased in your overall budget towards a ADC item. And then you also have the moon speed that is also being reduced on all of them. So every item from Flickerblade, Hurricane, Rapid Fire Cannon, they're losing their 7% to 4%, which is quite a big deal. Also, Rapid Fire Cannon does take a little bit less extra damage it deals now towards targets. And then if we look at other items like Static Shiv here, there's also getting nerfed by 5 AD, attack speed 5%, and the moon speed 5% to 4%. It all amounts up, and that's what I want to teach you guys here too, is that Renekton is not the only one getting hit, or it's not even just a doomsday patch for Renekton. Like, for ADC players, this means they have to play even more cautious now. And while we are losing some AD on our total items, that is not ever escaping the fact that Renekton has some of the highest AD scans in the game. He has so many combos, animation cancels, mechanics. There's so many ways to, you know, skin a cat, as they say, right? So Renekton can basically do it all. He can easily one-shot, he can peel, he can have all these utility-based things, and there's nothing to really be worried about here. And I think when you have all these factors that are being hit onto the range classes of champions, this is going to overall impact the game state where a lot more ADC champions are going to be played less in solo lanes. Things like top lane, mid lane, they're definitely getting hit. Bot lane as well, they're going to take a little bit longer to scale. They might even just tank a lot more in the grand scheme of things. They might spike an extra, it might take them an extra 5 minutes before they spike. Maybe 2.5 minutes. Whatever the case may be, right, it is still impacting their gameplay. In the majority of your games where you're super far ahead, if you can kill the ADC carry and put them behind even more, with death timers increased as they did previously, or even just being able to wipe them off the map for an objective, it's all snowballing even harder into your favor. So, in theory, I think these changes are pretty good for Renekton, essentially. And if we're looking at Mure Mana as well, and Mana Mune, so the overall mana AD that you're getting is reduced by 0.5%. Again, adds up. The on-hit 2 is reduced. Spell damage as well. Or actually, wait, spell damage is actually increased now. Well, either way, it's a fractional amount that's being increased in compensation for the on-hit to be nerfed as well as the passive damage. So, all in all, I think it's still a pretty decent change. Then we have things like Lord Dominic's, which is getting reduced to 35, which is pretty dreadful, to be quite honest with you, for a armor pen item. But considering that ADCs are already so strong in the first place, maybe it's fine, but maybe they didn't have to do that, because we're going to get into a tank meta based on the item health changes probably introduced into the game. Following on, we have more Reminder, which is debatably one of the better items in comparison to Lord Dominic's right now, so they can build this, but there's also 200 extra gold, so to finish off a Last Prime for 200 extra gold, that's a big deal right there. So another delay in ADC's power budget, which will give you more room to play the game. Terminus is also getting reduced a little bit, kind of whatever change really. Essence Reaver is getting also nerfed. I don't think this item's really a big standout currently for the champions that were being played, so This is also whatever here. Kraken Slayer as well is getting nerfed by 5 AD. Moon Speed by 1%. A non-hit is also being reduced as well. A little bit extra for the start of the game, 150, but it also goes down from 310 to 200. These are all giant changes, guys. Like, when you're looking at these changes, you're not thinking, oh god, I can't play the game anymore, Renekton's nerfed. Then you look at this class and you're like, oh wait, one of my only counters in the game is being hard nerfed now. This is going to be a lot more easier to play the game. And you know what? That's right. You know, that's how I perceive it, at least. Like, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, listen, I made a prediction before about how the meta was going to be in my last video I made on the durability patch and stuff, and it all came true. And I think, once again, I think you're going to be seeing Renekton feeling a lot stronger. There is going to be a little bit of, like, item build changes we're going to have to make, but overall, I think that it's going to look a lot better for Renekton in terms of how you play the game. It's just a little bit of item theory that needs to be developed within the next split, so I think that's all that it mainly takes. Next, we have Collector getting changed as well. We already read Blair Rune King being reduced, it's kind of whatever as well. Collector being increased to 3,400 gold. This item is probably going to be a troll item now. Like, I don't see anybody wanting to build this. Like even things like Caitlyn, things like Jhin, spending that extra 200 gold to get a Collector is a big deal. And the lethality being reduced by 2. I think Riot's going to end up, like, changing this, but it seems like a really big nerf if you ask me. And then we also have Yuntel Wind Arrows. I don't even know who built this item, but I don't think anyone's going to be building this item, if you ask me. Or maybe they will. 35% to 70. Why is it flat 70 damage? This could be something, but honestly, I'm not really sure how this is going to interact with the champions that want to play it. Scimitar, I mean, nerf. Okay, it's a little, you know, change, but I don't really see anybody going to be playing this item in most games, because most of the CC in the game anyways is not cleansable, so I don't see an ADC having to build this, like, outside the short amount of champions that probably will build it into a game. Then we have the biggest and most influential change to ADCs, Infinity Edge. So Infinity Edge is going from 3,400, which was already the most expensive item you could buy for an AD carry, to 3,600 gold. This is huge, guys. Like, I just said that Collector's huge for 3,400 gold, but now 3,600 gold is the pricing of Infinity Edge. And that's a lot of extra gold you have to grind for. That's already 200 extra gold for a Jhin if he wants to play these items. Wait, 200 even? Well, 400, sorry. 400 extra gold in total. And that's already, like, a couple waves, an extra kill or two. Like, there's a lot at stake there. And if you're already falling behind or you're already struggling with a class that's ahead, it's going to be even harder to maintain a lead or even trying to get a lead. So I will expect a lot of ADCs crying in my TikTok comment section next patch about how weak ADCs are and how broken Renekton is. But all in all, you know what? Fuck them. They deserve to have a weaker class after, you know, the elo inflation that a lot of them had, you know? But yeah, even if that wasn't enough too, 80 AD to 70 AD, it's even more of a big nerf now. So I think on-hit champions are probably going to get more play than crit currently, so that is a, like, class of champions that are pretty strong into Renekton. However, again, a lot of these items are being changed to begin with, so it's going to be a lot harder for them to even get those leads in the first place, or at least it's reduced to what it was before. So overall, less ADC and bot lane gaps probably going on, and I think that's a good sign for Renekton in the meta. Next, we do have some AD assassin items. Umbral Glaive, don't really care about that. Ghostblade, a little bit of a change here, 100 extra gold. I think the out combat moon speed being reduced to 20 for everyone is pretty meh. Don't think it's that good. Either way, I think Ghostblade is, you know, kind of dead either way. It is a former shell of itself at this point. Opportunity getting reduced as well. A little bit of changes here. Still pretty good for the champions that probably want to build it. But yeah, not really a Renekton item. Edge of Night, 200 gold. It is kind of a little big hit because it was a really nice last item you could buy, or even like a fourth item, excluding boots into, like, most games. But if you can't build that now for lethality Renekton, sorry, if you have to, like, spend an extra 200 gold for it, it's not the end of the world. It's still pretty good for what it's giving you. But overall, the skill ceiling for this item is a lot more drastic now, because with extra 200 gold, you need to make sure that you don't lose your Edge of Night shield. So that's a lot more playability that has to be played there, a lot more of a skill ceiling for the item, so just want to keep that as well explained for you guys. Cyclo Sword, this is nothing really good for Renekton. A lot of these items aren't really good for Renekton, to be quite honest with you. Renekton does better with Blair Rune King, Eclipse, like Serylda, Profane in terms of full AD items. So if we just go to them quickly as well, you'll see Serylda has been changed as well massively. The cost has been reduced from 3,200 to 3,000. So when you compare it to the other Last Whisper items, it's actually the cheapest one now, I think. Maybe Last Whisper's equal to it. Either way, pretty decent change of being able to buy it because I was already struggling to get it. And the overall recipe as well to like build the item has been changed. No more Brutalizer, which means there's no more awkward build paths with it. And it's a Stripe going core field into the Last Whisper. And it receiving more haste as well is definitely a lot better. Removed Rancor. I think that was the slow. So I think the slow has been removed now, which is a little bit sad, but it is what it is. But it does get 30% armor pen, so it does remain a pretty good item. Actually, wait, no, the slow hasn't been removed. It's actually the lethality passive, where the more lethality you build, the more armor pen you're going to get. So you basically remove that now, and you now have armor pen, which 30%, pretty decent. I think it's actually more back on the map of like being able to buy it for Renekton, in my opinion. Because I didn't like how it was previously, so I think this is a better change. Where I don't have to stack lethality to make sure I get the value out of the item. So it does buff full AD a little bit, I guess, in that aspect. But it's probably more of a neutral change more than anything. And lastly, Profane Hydra. So I think Profane took quite a big hit, maybe. Well, they reduced the gold by 100, which is good. Haste has been lowered by 10, not so good. The Cleaver has been reduced by 10%. The Radius has been reduced by 100. And the Cleave overall... Is this the active? Oh, it actually is the active. So, yeah, this is getting nerfed then by 20%. So, the thing is with this item is that I don't know how good it's going to feel because, again, your damage is going to be a lot lower. Well, I won't say a lot lower, but it will be noticeably lower. So, having an item like this, I don't know if it's going to feel good, but... Typically, it's giving you wave clear, it's giving you an animation cancel of damage, it's giving you execution damage. It gives snowballing potential, but do you have to build the same one ahead? I personally like going Borg Eclipse Serylda at times, so Profane wasn't really an option till 4th, if I wanted to build that or Edge of Night. So all in all, I don't know how this item's going to feel, but I do think full AD as a playstyle will be a lot better to play. There'll be a lot less cooking abilities being around, or champions probably being played in the result of moon speed being lowered, so there's more opportunities to jump onto people and kill. So overall, I don't think it's the worst, and I think it could make a little comeback for one tricks as well, including myself, so we're gonna have to see how that feels. Now here we have a bunch of AP changes, but I'm not going to go over them too much because there's a lot of things here. But all in all, little power reduction here, little changes going on. Rocket Belt being nerfed for instance, Maligence being nerfed as well, or kind of reworked, I guess. Not reworked, I guess shifted around. Horizon, lowered down, extra haste. Blackfire Torch, it is getting AP nerfs overall, and the change as well. I mean, it's kind of whatever, I think. I think it's still going to be fine for the champions that will build it. Like, I don't think mages are really getting hit. Like, when I look at these changes, it's a bit more of a slap on the wrist. Kind of like the fighter items, at least to my opinion, because I do believe fighter items weren't really nerfed as big as they look. However, for a lot of like mages, like a lot of it's just kind of like little stats here and there, while the items already have a lot. Like Luden's, for instance, has a lot of great stats on it, and only losing 10 haste is nothing for the champions that build it. Storm Surge also going down in moon speed, also over moon speed factors as well, the duration as well. It's actually more of a buff, kinda. So AP assassins could maybe feel that, like a Kali, like in being able to proc it faster. Even have the additional base damage too, like 10 extra damage in sacrifice of 5%, which obviously hurts the late game, but aids the early to an extent. I think those changes are probably good for those champs, but all in all, nothing's really happening here. The biggest one is Cosmic Drive being changed. So I think now it's a little bit... How does this work? For 2 seconds, an ability to champion. So I guess it's just specifying that any magic or true damage, you'll get moon speed for it, but it'll be less. So yeah, like either these changes are like kind of whatever. Banshee's Vow also is same as like Edge of Night. Stats are also a lot lower, like they should be. Like I think this is a pretty good change in being able to reach targets. Like I think Banshee's Vow sometimes is like very annoying, so it does help once again for full AD playstyle as well. being able to go for W's and being able to be rewarded and being able to keep track of the Banshee's Veil a lot better as well, instead of being 30 seconds for people. Then we have Lichbane too. Lichbane's pretty... Lichbane's going up by 1580. I mean, for AP, that's pretty crazy actually. But it is getting a hit overall. It's a pretty big hit to Lichbane, so it's going to change a lot of things around. Shadow Flame also gets a change a bit as well. Nothing much. Riftmaker. Zonya's being hit. That's a pretty decent one, I would say. And Rabadon's. But yeah, that is basically AP items support. I don't think there's a lot here. I'm just going to read over the ones that Renekton probably cares about. So Zeke's going down for 50-30. Probably don't want to build this much anymore. I think he was already on the lacking side of things, so I'm probably going to have to skip that one. Knight's Vow being increased by 100 gold. It's pretty whatever, I think. Frozen Heart also being changed as well. The Rockside passive has been removed, so that means you'll be able to do more damage now. Apparently the passive as well worked on other things as well, and it wasn't just champions. I didn't actually take notice of that, but I guess that's a little bit better. But I guess the whole armor aspect of being increased is going to help the champions that build it into Renekton, so I don't know if this is actually better than good. Because again, it's an annoying item and it's very cheap. And I think that's the problem with Frozen Heart as a whole. This one mask will still be really good. So essentially, the only thing that's being changed here is that you will not be stealing the magic resist from people now. I don't think. Wait, we'll make bonus magic resist. Yeah, you won't be getting the magic resist now. So the shred is more of like what the item is for. So on Renekton, it is very good if you have a high AP composition. So AP jungler, mid, maybe support. Really brilliant item. Even 2 of them is good enough, and I think that's why you should be building it as well. Other items like Trailblazer, it's kind of whatever. Gauntlet is being increased massively, but it's also getting more spell damage. Delaying tanks their power spikes is always a good thing for Renekton, so it is going to make it a lot more awkward for these champions to receive their items. However, things like Alawi might not really mind this, and they'll probably still build it anyways, as it is still more of a nerf. No, it's more of a buff, kinda. Like 50% extra AD, which is good for Alawi, and then the slow as well. Very annoying. Going to be interested to see how this works, but I think it's going to be pretty annoying for the champions that were good of it into Renekton. Sunfire Cape is also getting shifted around a little bit. It's a little bit less damage now, being reduced. I think overall, it also doesn't ramp up anymore, so it's like straight up like 20 damage as well, I believe. So I think tanks won't be doing the damage that they were doing, and already Sunfire was more of a lacking item to me, so I think that's pretty good. Then we have the 4-mile too on top of that, getting reduced massively. The health is also being only 150 now. It's going to be really weird seeing that in the game. But the armor is 80. Thorns is increased as well, but also lower damage. I think this change is probably garbage, to be quite honest with you. You probably just want to go Frozen Heart instead. But I guess it's more accessible for the tanks as well, that just want to play for utility. And Riot doesn't reward the tank class by doing more damage, but instead by the fact they're buying a cheap item that is going to be giving them the frontline stats. So I think the tank champion's actually pretty decent, maybe. Hollow Radiance, kind of whatever. I guess it's getting reduced a little bit. Despair, a little bit of a change here as well. Like, all in all, I think a lot of these items are just kind of going to be acting the same. I think Force of Nature takes a big hit alone from Moonspeed, which is a big factor. Spirit Visage is actually getting more of a beneficial change, possibly. 200 gold less. So in the games where maybe you can afford to get sustaining based items, it's probably going to feel good. So for my Ravenous Hydra fiends out there, you're probably going to be enjoying this. Probably going to be licking your lips over the changes that are being made here. And then you also have Kanik as well. Kanik is getting, I guess, it's like not that bad, I guess, of a nerf. It's actually still relatively the same. Deadman's is getting increased though, like in their health and their armor. Deadman's getting a little minor change here too. 50 extra health into 10 extra armor. Moonspeed lowered a little bit, and the max moonspeed as well. I think it still could be good for Renekton if you wanted to build it, but it's eyeing more towards a tank purchase than a greedy snowball purchase. As I like to build it for the Moonspeed. So, all in all, the only last change that I think is really worth talking about in all these things is Jackshow here. So, Jackshow is getting changed a little bit as well. So, you're just going to get a Giant's Belt now. Health is increased and armor mag resist reduced. All in all, I think it's fine. Don't think much changes about the item. And I think it's just made to be able to get more health. Which overall, the more health that is being put into items, it's actually Renekton's benefit. Because once again, Blair Rune King and Eclipse are 2 of Renekton's main items that you can build. And both of those shred health. And if you could shred health, you can armor reduce with your E and Black Cleaver or Grudge. You're going to actually be having an easier time being able to deal with. Also, I guess the last thing I forgot as well to mention is boots being changed. So here's like some of the boot changes. Not going to talk much about them because everyone's been talking about them, but CDR boots, in my opinion, kind of whatever. Merc Treads, 100 extra gold. I think that's pretty meh, but I guess it's fine, but it also makes no sense. Like, so you have 1,300, I think Plight Steel Caps is 1,200. It's also increasing the percentage damage, which is a bit of a nerf to Renekton, but also a buff into certain classes like ADC, so I don't think it really matters in terms of Renekton's performance. It actually feels better to play. And yeah, I think that's practically it. I mean, there's not much else to really talk about. So I guess it's time to talk about what is actually being changed. But yeah, guys, back to the notes now. So we've just read all the item changes. I didn't expect to be doing all this, but you guys wanted this video and you're going to get this video. That's how dedicated I am to making you these type of videos. So, you know, I'm trying my best as well with all these things. But little summary that I wrote here. I think I have to actually change some things here because this was like from before I was reading, but essentially all these things are good. I guess they took out the swiftness boots changes. Didn't really see them here. I guess not. Yeah, they're good still. I'm probably still going to build those. Mercury Treads, I think this is pretty meh because again, 100 extra gold is pretty big, but I guess it's like just to delay people from rushing them, which I guess is fair point. Steel Caps changes, very good. Into ADC characters or even range top lane. Plight Steel Caps is going to feel good with second wind, D-shield. Really, really nice. CDR boots, trash. It's reduced by 100 gold, but you're losing 5 haste. And already you got hit before in a previous patch, so I think it's pretty underwhelming if you ask me. Black Cleaver, still decent. Nothing really changes. Loses AD. It's going to feel a bit worse if you want to rush it first. Still decent second or third item, but I think for me, I'm probably going to build it more as a second or third still. Probably third more so, but we'll see. I'll have to itemize and see how that feels for me. Eclipse is still a great state. I think it's actually better than fine. I think it's pretty good. Sterak is still decent too. Bloodmail, I think it has potential based on all the health builds that could be coming out of this patch. Ravenous Hydra, I mean, I wrote consideration here, but to be quite honest with you, I don't think I'm going to like it, but maybe for you guys you'll like it. Shojin, maybe I got the wrong end of the idea, but I think for me, and just generally, it's a lot worse in just the stats and like building it, so I think it's kind of whatever. Stridebreaker, I wrote absolutely horrible here, but this is before I started playing the new build of Renekton, so I'm going to say it just took... I'm going to say big hit, relatively for the game. So again, moving the temper passive, reducing the attack speed and AD, all pretty big changes. Active didn't do a lot of damage already. Definitely more utility-based of a purchase, so again, it's not so much for you. It's nothing that, like, carry potential that you have, but it still helps your team, and it still helps you reach people too. Especially if everyone getting the moon speed hit. So maybe it ends up being fine, but I'm not entirely sure. Sundered Sky, I think this item is just straight up terrible. So I'm just going to write it here. Titanic, again, a lot of these things I wrote here were just like at the time when they were making more changes, but they reverted them. So I guess this is like maybe okay. Like, I don't know how to really react to it. I need to try it out, but it's still probably like B tier for me. Maybe it could be an A tier. Who knows? But probably gotta sit with B tier, if you ask me. Edge of Night, 200 extra gold. It's not the biggest deal, but obviously there's more of a skill curve of it. You have to like play for an extra amount of gold in the game, in a game where you probably have to carry. And on top of that, you need to keep the active like in relation to the gold that you're spending. So try to outplay situations and try and keep your Edge of Night up is, you know, as pivotal as possible for you to win the game. So just keep that in mind. Profane Hydra, I don't know if it's as big as enough as I thought. Maybe it's still big enough. I'm gonna go ahead and say big enough. So you could still build it with full AD, but it might just take some practicing to feel the changes. But I think even before it had like an 80% active and it didn't feel that good. So all in all, I'm not really sure how to rate it, but I will just put big enough for the sake of this video. And Serylda, I think Serylda comes back to a purchase as Renekton. Like, I think it still feels good with the slow. I think it also feels good with the basic on pen beam granted back to it, the 5%, the cost reduction too, the lethality removal. I think it makes it more of a viable item for playstyles, so I think that's pretty good. Okay guys, now that I've talked about overall items within the patch, I will just talk about my overall post thoughts after reading it. So what we can conclude is that there is going to be less damage overall, with all the items being reduced, which again is a buff to Renekton, and I think that makes him pretty decent. I don't think his items took that big of a hit in comparison to others. So I think he's actually pretty playable, and it isn't as doomed as you guys might seem to think it is. The next thought too is that Bork and Eclipse are going to get a lot more value too. I don't think this is dead anymore. I actually need to rewrite that here in my notes. So I think Bork and Eclipse are pretty good due to the fact that more health's in the game, so more health shred, and the fact that both of these items passes aren't getting nerfed, just make the playability and going these items a lot better. So I'd actually suggest you to play more of these just for the sake of trying to win games and being able to outscale a lot of health carriers within the game. Next as well, I think there's going to be more playability in the game. Being that everyone has less moon speed, there's also less opportunities to run away from people like bruisers, so bruisers get a lot more impact and action in the games, and Renekton already having, you know, a lower E cooldown these days, and also the fact you get a lot of CDR, and you're also able to reach people with a Stridebreaker or other slow based type of things, or your stuns with WMAX. With all that mouthful being said, there's a lot more ways to be able to reach people and also have more playability into the mid game. So it's going to help you have a lot more situations to snowball and close out the game. Another point that I have as well that I just mentioned is that moon speed has also been nerfed as well, which obviously can be abused less by a lot of classes in the game, which again means that people have to rely less on that crutch of going moon speed items to build other ones, which mean that you can use your kit a lot more often as you're able to actually stay in melee range. And obviously that's a great change for melee champions, and that's why I think Renekton's going to feel a lot better too. It's also going to allow you to easily gap close towards people as well at a consistent rate. Now, while snowballing has also been nerfed as well, I think, like I said at the beginning, Renekton is still a big outlier because he's one of the best snowballing champions in the game. He's always a great champion at adapting to the meta, where he's able to abuse his items, and I think all these changes conclude that Renekton is practically in a great state, if you ask me. I know 3-in-1 also agrees with me with a lot of these takes as well, but I know it's just like probably trying to play certain items that will probably like be a bit of a learning curve, like the whole item changes with Sterak, item cost goals of Eclipse, Stridebreaker being changed too. Once we figure out how to build these and like what type of items you can build, I really do think Renekton is going to be in a pretty unstoppable state if you're at your top of your game. So I highly recommend as well to just try and keep your eye out on what all the pros are doing, like all the Koreans, like all your one tricks. And I think once you find a curve that works for you and like a build and a playstyle, I think you're going to actually be grinding a lot of LP. And finally, like another little point as well that I probably do get is that there could be a boring scaling meta, which could reduce Renekton's playability because a lot of items are getting nerfed, and obviously a lot of things are more scaling based too, like tanks wanting to get items faster. That means they're going to play a lot more safer, and because they're playing a lot more safer, that simply means that they're going to be, you know, trying to grind out CS, staying on the tower. So I think it's your job to try and play waves properly under your side of the map, trying to go for plays of your jungle, like try and set people behind, like enemy junglers, going mid lane for kills, maybe setting up crash dives, freezes for your jungler to come, going for grubs, etc, etc, right? So if you can find ways to get past these boring champions that might be played, I don't know who's going to be played right now. It's kind of up in the air for interpretation, but I think any champions that just essentially have cheaper items that like can outscale you or be more of a brick wall, I think they're the ones that are going to be a lot harder in the grand scheme of things to put behind. But again, this was more of a point from before, so I don't know how much this is going to actually lead up to the live patch, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see more people trying to just farm out their golden lane, try to take TP, try not to go for fights so often, because if you do fight and you fall behind, it's probably even bigger than it was before to be useless. For champions like Darius or anything that's like Feast or Famine, Kled, even Renekton himself, if you do fall behind and you have to like wait even more to get that extra hundreds worth of gold into your boots or into your core items, it's going to be a really gigantic hit for those risky 1v1 playstyles. So all I can probably say is just keep caution, play the best that you can, and obviously a lot of people probably will be thinking this way and might be trying to play TP and try and play really boring champions in the process. Yeah guys, with all that being said though, that is practically my thoughts on the patch 14.19 changes. It's been a long video, didn't think I was going to be making one this long, but here I am. So yeah, hopefully you guys can figure out the meta. Hopefully you guys also enjoyed this video, and if there is anything I got wrong or anything that you think that you agree with me with, make sure to write in the comments below. And with all that said though guys, thank you all for watching, thank you all for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and also subscribe as well if you're new here and want to see more great high quality videos from me. And if you also want to keep up with my streams too, make sure to go over at Godrekton_. I'm trying to stream more regularly now, so you will see me around more often. With that said though guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. So peace out and have a good one. Bye bye.